Welcome to the Lovecars On The Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars On The Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. What a weekend of motorsport. There was so much going on. Formula One, BTCC, Le Mans, of course, came back after lockdown. NASCAR, brilliant Indycar. Plenty to talk about. We are going to kick off, of course, with Formula One. I guess the question is, Tiff, Needell, are the new rules working for Formula One?
Oh, well, this is what, I was saying last week, we sort of, because Sky and everybody hype it up. Oh, it is better this year. Everybody seems to, it's this hype that, and I questioned it on Twitter last week. Well, are they really any better, apart from the fact they follow a little bit closer? But you look at the race, I mean, obviously Ferrari's downfall is the big story, and it's so awful for you. You feel sorry for Leclerc, who's qualifying laps, his speed. He gets this one extra lap. He did it at Monaco and he did it again at Azerbaijan to get an amazing pole position. But then, we were robbed of a race. First, their strategy changed very early. It was a full course. There was not a full course yellow. They had a virtual safety. So Charles went into the pits. So we never found out really how the head-to-head would have worked before the engine had gone and Sainz was out and the race had pretty much gone. That was it. But the rules, it's just we've got Ferrari and Red Bull. They've managed to make their cars work. So we have got an amazing season ahead of us if Ferrari don't keep on making mistakes or having engine failures. With a great Red Bull again, Max Verstappen. Huge ups for Sergio Perez, because I have to admit, although I was a huge fan of his, he really impressed me in a Formula 2 race, GP2, and Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. Gosh, I don't know when it was, 10, 15 years ago. And I had him on my radar as a real talent. Then did he go to McLaren? But where did he go? He didn't do that well. And then I thought with the Pink Panthers that Ocon was better than Perez. And I was really sort of beginning to write Perez off myself. But I have to admit, eat my hat. He's really come on strong on the qualifying lap.
I think he's certainly found some confidence, but Max has definitely got the edge on him. Whatever you say, whatever you say about team orders,
but only an edge. I mean, this is the thing Red Bull needed. They finally got a number 2 that's close enough to Max, and occasionally even quicker than Max, to give him this double attack on the single Ferrari. Because Sainz is still, even though he's had mechanical problems, he had a terrible qualifying lap. So it could be a good season if Ferrari can get some reliability. But they're not following close enough. We've got the poor old Mercedes. I mean, everyone's going to laugh at Lewis, because you Brits, you Brit fanboys, you're getting your own back now that Lewis hasn't got a good car. And I understand George being quicker than Lewis. That car looks the most awful, horrible thing. And if I was a 7 times, stroke 8 times world champion, would I want to really literally break his neck?
Yeah, but you say that. I'm a massive Lewis fan, but it's the amount of times he mentioned his back. Even when he was being interviewed, he was holding his back like that. It's like, really?
It does look correct. Well, George has said the same. I mean, it's odd that it's only Mercedes that seem to have got this really bad porpoising. But even so, these are the cars for the next 3 or 4 years. That's what George is saying. Well, but I suppose they're just saying, well, you've got to sort Mercedes out. Everybody else is surviving. Even the other drivers, you see the Ferraris and the Red Bulls, they're all bouncing up and down. It can't be good for them.
If you want the most entertaining motorsport to watch, check out a catering race. It's live on YouTube now. It is genuinely.
All right. It is exciting. It is live on YouTube. No, it is. It's correct. But I mean, as a Grand Prix, the slightly different level. I appreciate Caterham racing because we'll talk about IndyCar racing, which is as good as Caterham racing later on. But it's the fact that teams can't be consistent with these cars, because McLaren had another weird weekend. And we've got the story of Ricciardo fighting for his job. And so he put in a reasonable effort. They qualified 11th and 12th, didn't they? And Ricciardo then managed to get ahead of Lando. They finished 7th and 8th or something.
There's a little bit of a spat there because Lando was saying, "Oh, I'm faster than him. You should let him pass."
The usual.
We let him pass earlier, Lando, and then he said, "Yeah, but that was for strategy, not for position and for the final place." But
the other teams. The other teams can't seem to get consistency. McLaren were podiums and now they're 10th and 11th. AlphaTauris were bad, and then last weekend they had a good weekend, because Gasly was up there in 7th or something, and
Yuki's
his mate Yuki was 8th on the grid, so they had and yet the Alphas that were going really quick, they were down the bottom. And it seems like we can't get much consistency out the midfield from circuit to circuit. They can't follow close enough. All the overtaking was DRS. So that idea that they could really go nose to tail, watch IndyCar later, that's nose to tail racing through the highest speed corners. So, you know, I mean, I'm a huge fan, you know, of the designers and everybody else that come up with these rules and regulations. You know, Ross Broad, I mean, such a talent. And yet, I don't think he's working. And you don't seem to be allowed to say that. I mean, oh, Tiff, you know, there's been much better racing. I remind
You're
people.
You're such a dinosaur, Tiff. How dare you? How dare you comment?
Old man yelling at the clouds, you know. But you remember Brazil, that race when Lewis tracked down Max? We had the most amazing head-to-head race. So, I mean, they're all saying, well, when was the last race that was good as this year's?
Yeah,
well,
but what they'll say...
Brazil last year.
Exactly, but they'll say, if that happened now, they'll say, see, that only happened because they can do wheel-to-wheel racing now. They could follow much closer. It's all it's a spin. I'm telling you, it's all a spin to make people like us think, oh, yeah, the racing's better now.
But it's worrying. This is the rules we've got for, 3 or 4 years. So, I mean, I think some of the teams, well, Mercedes obviously led it, said that they must change the rules to stop the porpoising. But there is a way of some rule that might limit ride heights, and so they can't go so low to go quick. But obviously, Red Bull and Ferrari that seem to have got the sums right would protest against it. But I think they have to do something. I don't think it's not working. They're not, because I mean, the idea of the dream was to get rid of DRS. And we're so far away from seeing the back of DRS that, it's years.
Because the only time you get overtakes, especially around a narrow circuit, the only time you'll ever see an overtake.
Still great to see Grand Prix cars round that circuit. I still love that track. I mean, it's an amazing track to drive around, but too many slow 93 corners where they look so ponderous and heavy. So,
you know what I'd like to see? Because it is a good track. It is a fast track. And I'd love to see one year, maybe they'll do it. IndyCar can go outside of the USA and go the week after, go to Azerbaijan.
Yeah, but they'll be about 10 seconds a lap slower, and all the F1 bobs and stuff. That's fun. It's like, no, look how slow they are. That's the problem.
You can't win, but I think that'd be quite good.
Well, Formula One racing was ruined, or well, not ruined, went the wrong direction. Was it about 6 years ago when we must be 5 seconds? They had that regulations. We must make our cars 5 seconds faster, because that's what we all want. We just want the fastest cars. But the fastest cars aren't the raciest cars, aren't the most entertaining cars. They're just awesome bits of scientific kit. There's still lots of viewers out there now on Twitter who say, it must be the pinnacle of science. Even if it's the dullest racing, really, Hopefully Ferrari will sort out reliability and we will have an amazing rest of the season. So let's fingers crossed.
Big. These cars are so big now. It's no wonder there's no wheel-to-wheel racing. When you go around the 90-degree corner, you can't sort of dive down the inside because you're going to take off your wing. You just can't do it. I'll tell you what was good. Sebastian Vettel was good. It looked like Sebastian Vettel of old. He outbraked himself in one corner and lovely little pirouette to get back on track. But I thought
and Fernando, the old champions, seemed to have a good weekend. They were qualified 9th and 10th, didn't they? Moved up the order as the Alpine. So Ocon's getting a bit blown away. So talking about, I thought he was better than Perez on the old when they were Pink Panther teammates. But I think Ocon's having a very good time. He may be on the out list.
And something you don't see very often. You mentioned Yuki Tsunoda. He had a bit of bad luck, actually, but he actually got a black and orange flag. The first time I've seen that in Formula One. You would get it in club racing, of course, but he got a black and orange flag.
That's because there's always wings hanging off in Caterhams when you knock them. So exactly. Anyway, it wasn't the best Grand Prix. I mean, I know... everyone was thinking, I can be excited. They always love building it up, don't they? It's brilliant Grand Prix ahead.
Well, it's a brilliant circuit.
It wasn't a brilliant Grand Prix. No, there we go. But then talking about regulations.
Wait. Max 34 points in front.
Yep.
Is that too much? I don't think so.
No. It's only another failure from Red Bull or something, or Carlos Sainz torpedoing him at the first corner.
And they keep asking on Sky Sports. It's a no-brainer for me. Would you prefer a fast car that's unreliable or a slower car that's reliable? Fast car every day of the week.
No, slow car.
No. What? So you prefer to be Lewis Hamilton now in the Mercedes instead of Charles LeClerc in a Ferrari?
Well, if they all break down, no,
But
I
hang on,
you
which
want,
would
you
you
want
put?
no, I know you want the fast car.
Yeah,
I was just saying the opposite to you because I felt like it.
And you were saying about regulations.
Well, yeah, moving on. I mean, we'll come to Le Mans later. Le Mans was probably the biggest event of the weekend. We should be talking about it. But BTCC, talk about rules. So again, they've gone through the regulation change. They've got their hybrid, and they've got this push to pass. But it's not a push to pass. It's a bit of extra. And the trouble is, the touring car race, they're becoming very processional. We've lost the overtaking because we've lost the huge weight penalty. I mean, I've always said, BTC, it's a bit of a contrived regulations to make it exciting, which is why at the end of the year, there's always about 10 drivers still mathematically with a chance of winning a championship. Because the weight penalty, you could have the guy winning the lead of the championship would qualify about 15th. But this hybrid, it's not giving enough. Apparently, on a lap on your own, it gives about 0.3 or 0.4 of a second. So the championship leader is no longer turning up with a huge handicap, carrying this 75 kilos of his car. So it's becoming a more meritocracy championship, which I like in a purist manner. That's not what touring cars is all about. BTC was always about bashing and crashing and pushing and shoving. And I think this new added push, or not push to pass, this extra kinetic energy, extra energy, power you can use. And it's so complicated. Even I don't understand. I've tried to. In qualifying, the championship leader has none at all. And then down to the 11th fastest in different steps can have 15 seconds in a qualifying session. But, the full release is only worth about 0.3 a lap. So you're not moving up and down much. Then the race, it depends on where you are in the championship, who won the race, how many laps you have it and don't have it for. Then there's a green light in the rear window, which you can't see on telly. I keep on looking, when you've got a whole stream of cars coming through, the commentators know because there's a little electric mark by the number. And they're all saying, oh, he's going adding the power. But nobody was overtaking anybody. There's no actual visual difference. And this small amount of power increase does. And so it's quite processional. So I'd forget about telling the public at all about how much extra power they've got. So the first two races, the first and second were the same people. Tom Ingram won both from pole, and Ash Sutton had the 2 seconds. Well, Ash did come up from 5th to 2nd, and Ash is one person that does overtake, however equal the cars, and Ash will continue to overtake in the most outrageous places. But I just don't think the rules are making it. I think they're making it less exciting. That's the point. They're making BTCC less dramatic because we're getting more processional races. And how much they talk about this one. Oh, the green light's on in the window, the green light's on in the window. You expect them to go roaring past on the straight. They don't.
I was in Switzerland last week driving the Genesis GV60, the new electric car, and it's got a boost button. It was brilliant. It reminded me of what they must be doing. But you got proper power. You got like another 100 power for 10 seconds. If it was like that, it would work because you literally go back in your seat, get pushed back in your seat.
Yeah, but it needs to be a decent amount, and I think it's not enough at the moment. Whether they can change that in the future, who knows? But also, you have the first 2 races that are quite processional, and then they all wait for the banger race at the end of the first grid race. Well, they all go mental at the end of the day. But I mean, again, driving standards were coming up because is this getting turned around the car in front of you when you move over? The car's already there. It's the classic touring car crash because you're always trying to block at the last minute. And I was amazed. In fact, I'm glad he got done, to be honest. Don't want to be too upset with Gordon Shedden, but he just got on the tail of Adam Morgan's BMW the first race. I mean, it was the corner of his nose bumper to the corner of it, and he just kept pushing.
Yeah.
And he just turned Morgan at 120 miles an hour off into the barriers. Now, Shedden after the race, he was almost cocky. He said, the rule used to be you had to be half a car length alongside before you gave way. Now the rule is any overlap is your right to. And so looking back at the accident, and in fact, in the end, it wasn't on the straight because they were still finishing the corner when he started tapping his bumper. But of course, because he was so obsessed with being right, I know the rules, I'm in the right. He just kept on full throttle and turned Morgan. He knew he'd turn Morgan at the barriers. He knew it would cause a crash. Yeah, again, because the sort of safety and the amount of accidents we have nowadays, there's no real implied. And so
I couldn't bring myself to do it.
Penalty in the end. I know exactly. He should have just lifted off. You can't just because you think it's your right of way.
Yeah.
To continue to sort of push him until he's off. I'm sorry, Gordon. I mean, I respect Gordon's a brilliant driver. On this occasion, Gordon, you know, I don't think you could have. You should be quite so smug about knowing the exact regulation and staying on the throttle. I mean, of course, in the big that's awful shunt, horrendous shunt in the reverse grid race. When again, it was the same problem. I think it was Dan Lloyd, wasn't it? It was half a car ahead of Ricky Collard. Now, I haven't seen all the onboard cameras, so I can't comment officially. I don't know whether Dan was getting pushed over towards Collard by someone else, because there's a pack of cars, 3 abreast, going over Deers Leap and down the hill. Whether he was pushed towards, anyway, he turned around the front of Collard's car, hit the barrier, bounced back into the road, and then Colin Turkington with nowhere to go. This horrendous head-on shunt. I mean, it was a big impact. So I'm glad they all got away. I think Dan was going to have a bit of a checkup in hospital. So I don't know. I haven't got the update.
Safety touch now in racing cars is so good, isn't it?
But I don't know quite how you do this overlap regulation, because the trouble is, if you've got cars all around you, and you're defending, you're all moving, aren't you? You can't tell if someone is overlapping by 3 inches or whatever. Shedden was to Morgan. You don't really know that when you're trying to move over or defend. And so it's
going back to the Caterham, so if you check out the video, but in the second race, I'm going to overtake off the start, and the guy in front pulls over because he's too busy looking at the guy next to him.
Yeah, someone else.
So you can't be looking everywhere, especially the little Caterham mirrors. But so racing, these things happen. But I think
we have to move less. I mean, the point is they didn't happen. If I go back to my Formula Ford days, our grids were 3 at the front, then followed by 2, then 3 followed by 2, and we had some horrendous first corner shunts because we were all so close. But you didn't move around so much because you already had cars alongside you. Whereas nowadays, with nobody on the same row as you in a touring car, you don't actually have anyone beside you at all, do you, when you launch off?
People are quite happy to move across.
Yeah, as soon as they move, pole man.
It's like, whoa.
So they give pole man what's supposed to be the best side of the road, is the outside of modern Formula One. Yeah, as soon as they leave the grid, they just move across the inside to block. It's a problem moving around on the track way more than we did, when motor racing was dangerous in the past.
Some of the defending now in all sorts of motor racing now just really it gives me shivers. Fabrizio how do you pronounce his last name?
Giovinazzi.
Thank you. I've got his race suit, Paul O'Neill. I've got a race suit coming to me from Paul O'Neill from Gio this weekend. So will it fit me or not? Because I'm gonna...
he's about your size, I think.
He's really muscular, really buff, and like
big. Why are you wearing his suit then?
Because Paul O'Neill's doing this brilliant charity bike ride.
Okay.
And I bid on it, and I can't believe it's supposed to be a collector's item because it's signed and everything like that. But I bought it because I thought, oh, great, I could do some track days practicing that because it's only 150 quid. It should have been so much more. It should have been a couple of grand. But good for Paul, and thank you, Gio, for
a bargain.
Well,
anyway, good racing at touring cars, but I'm worried that the regulations, it's not as good as it used to be because of the new regulations.
And is your mate Plato going to get his...
Well, no, he's going backwards. His team had a very good weekend. Well, Cook's leading the championship. His teammates really leading the championship, having won. I mean, he did lose a bit of time in qualifying because he's leading the championship. So he only qualified about 10th, I think, Cook. But it's still going to be good. I'd like to see Ingram win a championship because he's been threatening to for a long time. He seems to be getting the pace and consistency.
I'm an Ash Sutton fanboy. I like.
Yeah, he's won 2.
I know.
Ash should be off at Le Mans.
He should be doing something else now. He's not...
Le Mans where we should have been. We should have been at Le Mans. Everybody should be at Le Mans. Le Mans.
Yeah, but you say that, Tiff. You say that, but it wasn't the most exciting Le Mans ever. I know it's really fun.
I mean, it was a dull Le Mans, which sadly happens sometimes, especially there's only 5 cars in the top class. I mean, it was never going to be the best ever. And as soon as the Alpine had trouble straight away, almost, they were out of it. And then there's the 2 Glickenhauses, I love the Glickenhauses, because it's this, privateer, spending his millions. And it's the most attractive looking car. It looks much nicer than those sort of blunt-nosed Toyotas. But they soon had small problems as well. And so it was down to a Toyota. Well, they were racing. I mean, it is, people say, well, those 2 Toyota, they're all racing for the best Toyota. But it's still, you sort of feel, I know they're racing, but you want another manufacturer in there. So, but the thing about rules in Le Mans, they are coming good, we all hope, because this was hopefully the last fairly dull Le Mans, because with coming up, I'm not sure who's next year or the year after, But joining Toyota, Glickenhaus and Alpine, we've got Ferrari, Porsche, Lamborghini, Cadillac, Peugeot, Acura and BMW. I mean, the future of sports car racing looks absolutely wonderful.
It does, doesn't it?
There's the big balance of power problem where there's the American regulations and the Le Mans regulations having to try and balance them together. And even this year, Glickenhaus has been on pole, Alpine are on pole, and Toyota, as they keep on changing how much power they're all allowed. If I read a regulation about how they were changing the LMGT for the weekend, and they're sort of reducing fuel capacity by 2 litres and increasing torque at different rev ranges by, amazing how detailed the tiny incremental changes they can make to these cars because they can get inside their electronic brains. But it was a nice sunny weekend at Le Mans. I'm sure the Brits out there had a great weekend, seeing who can build the biggest piles of empty beer bottles at the campsites. So it was still Le Mans. It was still a fabulous spectacle. The biggest controversy, of course, was when poor Alexander Sims got taken out in his Corvette. They had a minute's lead, and the GT Pros is such a big prize, really. That is a formula it's dwindled slightly. Sad, as less manufacturers become involved, but at least you can recognise the difference in a Ferrari and a Corvette and with the Porsches. But it was a horrendous shunt, and it looked like such an awful error.
For those of you that didn't see it, he's going again, like we just said about moving on the
street wide,
yeah.
But the point is, the amateur that move is Francois Perrodo. Now, he's been racing for 10 years at Le Mans. He's been doing the whole series in the LMP2, which he was driving. In fact, he won the GT and Le Mans last year, won the class. So he's no, green rookie. And I didn't hear if he tried to explain what happened, but I do know, and I don't know now. So I'll ask a modern Le Mans driver if anyone's listening out there. Because the old days, because that's a main public road, it's a crested road. And in the old high ground effect, the high downforce 200-mile Group C sports cars, when you tried to change lanes, you'd sort of edge up to the top. And when you went over the little crest, the car would suddenly move, into the other side. And some cars, before they got them sorted out early on after the first test day, the drivers were always saying, well, I can't change the lane because I have to go over the top. And there is a possibility, because he was in the middle. And when he sort of moved slightly left away from the other LMP2 cars alongside, the car may have just suddenly gone more than he expected, which is when he clouted poor old Sims was on his left. So it could have been. But whether the road is still like that, or whether it's now a beautifully flat tarmac race course, I don't actually know.
Do you know, I was just going to say, Tiff, that since I started racing, which is, I'm a novice, but you realise how much goes into this. So just me in my little Caterham, and got the Caterham team as well as a media driver. You have a crash, an accident, you get a DNF, and you feel gutted, absolutely gutted. But on that level, on that scale, where you've been planning and putting everything into it for so long, forget the money side of it, but just all those people, the team, the development, it's just heartbreaking, really awful. And you don't realise. I used to, when you see someone maybe you don't like in Formula One, they have a little crash on the first lap and you have a little chuckle. But now I think, wow, I feel it's not just them, it's everybody involved.
You're affecting.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, Alexander Sims is very good. I mean, he's a wonderful English gentleman. Yeah. But Perrodo went to the Sherwood bit. But Alexander's the driver. He sort of said, well, no, I know it's horrendous, but I've taken other people out in my career and ruined their races, and so it just happens. And I think they had to accept it. And Francois did go straight to the pit, and I think he would have been distraught because he's a very, very good amateur that's been racing for many years.
Well, speaking of
one Twitter said, these blooming amateurs shouldn't be allowed at Le Mans.
I saw that.
If it wasn't for amateurs, are the whole groundswell of Le Mans. I mean, if you didn't have amateurs financing, my first 4 Le Mans were all sponsored by an amateur. Pink Floyd's manager was one of my co-drivers, and he paid for the whole gig. There'd be about 15 cars at Le Mans instead of 55 or 60. So amateurs are part of the whole fabric of the Le Mans 24 and the Daytona 24-hour race because they pay for the cars.
So one final thing on Le Mans one, unless you got anything else. But
Ryan congratulations, Cullen,
Ryan Cullen, Vector Sport.
Our boy Ryan.
didn't have the best of races, but good to see him there. And he's a talented lad, as are the teams. So hopefully,
yeah. No, but I would say Toyota was a walk. But big congratulations to Sebastian Buemi, Brendan Hartley, and Rio Hirakawa, who had his first Le Mans win. The others already had a few, so good for the number 8 Toyota. Commiserations to Mike Conway again. Luckily, didn't win it last year, but poor old Mike, he's been on the wrong side of the Toyota's field for so long. With
what's your
Jose
highest
Maria
finish?
Lopez.
Tiff, was it third place?
Third on the podium, 1990. And Kamui Kobayashi. But Conway wasn't the only Brit on the podium. Congrats, Richard Westbrook was part of the third place Glickenhaus team, so Rich was up there. Will Stevens was part of the LMP2 winning team for Jota, so good for Will Stevens. James Collider came second in GT Pro Ferrari. David Pitton was third in GTM. And British Aston Martin, it was a British team, TF Sport, give a big credit. They won the GTM with Aston Martin, so that was nice to see. Always some British success at Le Mans, you like to see that. And looking forward to Le Mans getting a lot bigger, a lot more exciting.
Give us an invite next year, guys. There must be someone.
We'll go over.
Well, they probably want you. Right. So from a relatively dull Le Mans to absolutely brilliant IndyCar. You stayed up quite late watching this, didn't you? I just watched highlights.
Well, and I watched NASCAR after I watched the IndyCar, so I was up very late. I know there are people who don't like it because they're all in the same car. There's 2 types of engine, there's Hondas and there's Chevrolets. But it's just proper motor racing, and the Formula One diehards will just poo-poo it, just ex-Grand Prix drivers, letting useless drivers go round and round. And I think one Twitter thing, they just drive spec cars. And one of the Twitter people wrote back saying, in Indy qualifying, you're changing the jacking the car from left to right. They're changing settings. It's not just a dumb formula. It seems like to make it out to be. There's 27 cars, the greatest track, Road America, the best looking, best to drive. I've never raced on it, but I've spoken to people who have. It's about 4 miles long, every type of corner. You've got a white line, you've got a bit of grass. Turn 1, you've got some runoff curb that everybody uses, and they all use it. That's fun. But 27 cars, 2 women in the race as well. Simona Di Silvestro finished 21st. She hasn't raced in IndyCar for several years. Well, last year she did Indy on its own. So it was great to see her coming back and doing well. But there's all sorts of stories. A NASCAR veteran, Jimmy Johnson, they did go off at the first corner, the first lap. Good, that story. It's full of American young guns trying to prove themselves as the ex-Formula One drivers like, Romain Grosjean was 4th, Marcus Ericsson, fresh from winning Indy, came 2nd. Then the winners, the young, very all-American Joseph Newgarden, Alexander Rossi 3rd. And then we've got a couple of Brits out there, Brits that maybe should have been in Formula One, but, there aren't enough spaces. They didn't do so. Callum Ilott was 11th and Jack Harvey 13th. But again, we're talking about all these rules for overtaking. And we haven't, like in Formula One, people aren't aware as much. The commentators do mention it. You have to spend, you do a lap charging your battery up, don't you, in F1? They're saying George Russell, when he was defending, that he can push the battery extra power to defend. So in a way, they've got a push to pass in Formula One, which we don't talk about much, but it's not instantly available. You've got to do a previous lap charging up. But IndyCar got this push to pass. At different races, it's a different number of seconds. I don't know how many it is. It's always, you've got 100 seconds, I don't know. But that you can use that to defend or attack. So it's just a driver aid that is part of your strategy. And quite towards the end, the commentators were talking a lot about who's got the push to pass left, And it's a proper push to pass. You get a decent run. It's like a DRS scale of advantage. And so they've got that. But the onboards of the cars. Watch Herta chasing Ericsson down towards the end, and we stayed on board for about 2 laps. And it was a flash of opposite lock through them, flat out the kink at about 140 miles an hour. And then Ericsson just dropped a wheel over the white line onto a thing called grass, and had to back out of it and got overtaken. In modern European tracks, if you go wide, you stay on the throttle, you don't get overtaken. You just might get a track limit. You've got instant punishment. You get a wheel on the dirt, but I've got to back out of it, and then you're back on again. And was it Grosjean that went off at the kink as well, flat out, going against the wall? I don't know, it's just excitement all the time. There were quite a few offs early on, too much. They had that full course yellows.
How many cars on the grid, Tiff?
27.
It's why the odd number?
It's just whoever wants to enter can come in. I don't know what maximum they have. But it's whoever wants to build their own team and come out, you can be a race, you can win races if you get your team right.
And which engine is more successful, Honda or Chevrolet? What do the top?
I think they're pretty 50-50. I have no idea who was in what. I never concentrate, actually. Even the commentators don't tend to say too often. I think it was a Chevy that won. I think I think the second was a Honda. No, I don't know.
And what does a pit stop take? How long?
Pit stops. You haven't talked about pit stops. But how exciting are they to watch? You get 4 wheelmen with a gun each and a wheel each. And I mean, they're probably, I don't know, it might be 12 seconds or 8 seconds or 15, I don't know, because they're refueling at the same time, because they've got small fuel tanks, which makes it a lighter car. But you see these 4 guys run out with their wheel guns onto their knees, doing the wheel change on their own, So you actually can appreciate each mechanic. When one mechanic makes a mistake, you lose 2 or 3 seconds, But in Formula One, you can't tell who's doing what, can you, in that 2 seconds?
They weren't very good this weekend, actually. There's lots of pit stops, sort of 4 or 5 seconds in Formula One. But I love Le Mans. When I went with Chevrolet a few years ago, and you're looking down, or you go in the pits with them, but because they were the host. But there's so much going on, but everybody has a job. Fuel and driver change. So exciting. But you can see what's going on with Indycar on pit stop.
Yeah. So in Formula One, you can have your appliance of science and your porpoising beasts, behemoths. That's a good word, behemoths. But at the moment, IndyCar is the place to watch if you want single-seater entertaining racing. Not the highest level of science. No.
Bring it to Azerbaijan next year for an invitational, the week before, the week after. Would it be amazing? Bring it to Europe, or is that Europe?
But it'd be similar to Formula 2, I suppose. In Formula 2, we get great racing. So
yeah, that's true.
But it tends to get overshadowed because the Formula 2 race is about 7 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's watching.
So NASCAR wasn't. Oh, I don't get.
No, you see, I'm happy to say NASCAR was the dullest race. At Sonoma, it's always a dull. I don't know why. It's a great road course in California with ups and downs and hills. And the cars they're great to watch. They're leaping over all the curves and bouncing and things, but it never gets a good race. It always seems to be a bit processional. And it was yet again very processional, especially after car number 5 had a real problem. Well, again, this is weird strategy that happens because he stayed out to win the first stage, his 3-stage race, because you get extra points for the playoffs. Whereas everybody that wasn't winning, that wants to win the race, pitted before the end of the stage. So when the winner of the stage, Larson, came out, he was 20th on the grid for the restart because all the other 19 had pitted before he'd won it. When he was coming back to the pack, got up to about 9th, and he had a pit stop and a wheel wasn't attached properly, so he disappeared. Anyway, doesn't matter. Nothing goes away from the pure joy at the end when Daniel Suarez, this wonderful Mexican, I was going to say kid, he's 30 now. The first Mexican to win a NASCAR championship. He was the 2016 Xfinity champion. But since then, in how many years is that? 4, 5, 6, 7 years. He's done about 175 NASCAR Cup races. And finally held off good. I mean, he was really good. He was on it to the end. And there weren't many full course yellows, so he ran fast right to the finish and took a win in his Chevy. And he's another Trackhouse Chevy. He's a teammate of the Mellon Man, chap Ross Chastain. And there's this team Trackhouse. They bought, I think it was the Chip Ganassi team. And so it's a new team that's now won 3 races this year, 2 for the teammate and now 1 for Daniel Suarez.
It was still boring.
Yes, I know. It was a boring race. I'm trying to put aside the fact that it was a very dull race. But the joy of Daniel Suarez winning and everybody in the pit lane delighted for him. And on the slowing down lap, all the other competitors were bumping into him, which is a traditional way to congratulate someone.
Is that what happens?
Oh, yeah. You get a bit of a push up the back and a slap on the other side, and all your mates are waving at you. And
brilliant.
So everyone was delighted. Daniel Suarez. So it's Mexicans are on the move now. We got a Mexican in IndyCar, don't we have? Perez doing well in Formula One.
Pato.
Pato, of course we have. Yeah, so Mexicans are on their way. Yeah. Award in IndyCar.
Yeah.
Suarez in NASCAR and Perez in Formula One.
Yeah, good.
Mexicans are on the move.
I bet Carlos Slim's behind all 3 of those. Right, next week. This is pretty good. You've got from Azerbaijan all the way over to Canada next week for Formula One.
It's something they're addressing next year, aren't they? They're trying to put people more in one place at one time.
Like,
Canada usually a great race.
Canada's
a good race. Except if they start doing that braking trick, and I'll get my track limits hat on big time. Watch if this happens not in Canada. because Canada at the end of the big long straight's got the famous right left with the champions wall on the way out. And so the trick with this business, that if you're leading and you go off limits, you just have to give up any advantage. So the trick is you go down the right-hand side of the long straight, defending, so the guy with the DRS comes along to your left. You then, as the leader, brake impossibly late, go straight to the chicane, come back out in front of the pits while the bloke that couldn't overtake you then comes round, then back off, and then you're back. We gain no advantage, they say.
Okay, so
let's
see if this happens this weekend. Let's see if you called it.
You go back through old Canadian Grand Prix, it was a comedy, unless they made a curb to make it a harsher penalty if you do straight line. But that was the trick.
They're not going to have sausage curbs because they injure people.
Well, I know they launch. I know. What do you
do? MotoGP is in Germany.
Around the amazing Saskatchewan ring. I'm sorry, excuse me.
Have you raced there, Tiff?
No, it's a sort of bike track only. I think they have small junior single-seaters go there. It's it's the most amazing, scary, plungy, downhilly, short, left-hand, anti-clockwise shape of track, which always produces amazing racing. So that should be a real cracker.
Speaking of cracker, British Superbikes at Knock Hill. Oh, they're brave coming out there.
They're brave.
Duffers dip the first corner on a bike.
If you want to watch real racing, then you don't have to go to Scotland because you just have to go to Silverstone.
I know. Proper Caterham racing. I'm excited about this weekend.
How many races do you get? Because the Academy's still got the two huge grids going to join together, like you did last year, the Chaos race.
Yeah, that was a Chaos race.
But yours is
out of again. Another one.
Yes, no swearing, man. A lot of swearing. How many races are you getting?
So we race on the Saturday and Sunday, but we're the sacrificial lambs. They changed the timetable every single meeting, and with it early birds. So I think we're on qualifying's like 9 a.m. But the weather in the UK is supposed to be fantastic this weekend. No rain, beautiful sunshine. So I'm very excited about Silverstone this weekend. And you know what was good for me? Because
you were on the pace at Silverstone last year. You were on the pace before you started talking to people. You could have been on the podium, and then you lost your concentration. So it's a good track for you.
So now that Caterham Racing is over to Saturday and Sunday for me, now that I'm out of the academy, I like the fact that you stay around and you watch lots of the other races because it's brilliant. It is brilliant racing. And
have you got some testing before? Do you get any track time?
Yeah,
you haven't driven the road sport car now. You haven't driven the road sport car around that.
I'm taking this modestly seriously for once because it's going to be filmed for TV. So I've got to do well. I hope no one knocks me out this race. I'm so worried about that. But I'm practicing on Thursday and Friday, so I should get plenty of practice and plenty of laps in. I hope no one takes me out. I was taken out at Brands Hatch and at where was I last time? Snetterton. So I hope no one takes me out because this is for TV. Keep your distance. If anyone's watching, listening, keep your distance just for this one race, please.
I did the Formula Ford race for Top Gear Motorsports, having not been in Formula for 20 years. I went back to race the children, and I did 2 days testing like you because I thought, I've got to get reasonable pace. I got round Druids Corner on the first lap and got taken out. End of TV.
We'll talk about that offline, about what we do if that happens on a story, because we haven't got a story if that happens. We've got to make this TV show. There's no NASCAR next week. Oh my goodness, after 17 weeks on the trot, there's no NASCAR. Thank you.
There's 17 races on the trot. They get a weekend off.
We can focus on Caterham Racing instead. If you want to come and watch it, if you do come to Silverstone, make sure he's not going to be there now. He's just welched on me. I can't believe you let me down. Something about Father's Day and children.
I had a hectic month of May.
Father's Day, children, all that sort of stuff.
You didn't send me an email reminding me. I just thought, I'm in diary.
But as always, thanks for joining. Get amongst it in the comments below and tell your friends, help us get a few more followers, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.